Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining another edition of our GovCon365 Snacktime Snippets. My name is Mike Aaron Hersterbaumer, Senior Business Development Manager here at XTIVIA. Joining me today, as always, my colleague, Paul Skirpsky, our Vice President of our GovCon365 practice. Paul, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. How about you?
Doing well. I'm excited about the topic we are covering today.
Me too.
Folks, what we're here to talk to you about today is a topic that we hear, I would say, in pretty much every conversation we have with our prospective customers and clients, and that is the topic of DCAA compliance. This is something that as a government contractor we hear about all the time, and our system is built to help you manage that process, and that's that solution. But we hear it from really two types of customers, right? And prospective customers. Not only do we hear it from our customers that have experience in this space and really just want to understand, hey, how does GovCon 365 within the Microsoft Dynamics Business Central help us manage and stay compliant with DCAA and DCMA? But we also hear it from those companies that are working with the government and are going through a pre-award audit and have never been through this process before. So they have a lot of questions as to what that looks like and how we can help. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Paul's going to talk a little bit about what that is, and then we'll give you kind of a snapshot of some aspects of our system that cover that for you. So, Paul, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, Mike. Mike's spot on, right? And oftentimes, this will come up in the first conversation because what happens is these companies, they often will talk to companies that really don't understand what it means to be compliant, right? So the first thing that we go to is what the government leverages. So this is their standard form that they've used for years. There's been some things that changed, but SF 1408 lays out what's required to be compliant. And it's not just about your system, right? Because you could be on QuickBooks and be compliant, but you're going to have a lot of manual or offline processes that won't scale. Even if you use any of the big industry products, you could have processes you don't follow and you're not compliant, right? So it's a combination of the software automating things the government requires, your organization having defined policies and procedures, and making sure that the employees are following those policies and procedures. So what we've done today is we've taken some of these bullets and we're going to identify inside the system how we help to do that. And Mike, if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about the different modules. So for people that aren't familiar with Microsoft Dynamics, it is a fully integrated enterprise resource planning solution. So Business Central, most widely used mid-market ERP in the world. It's got over 150,000 companies and growing using it every day. I think, is that the number, Mike, today?
Yeah, last check.
Yeah. So, and it's growing really fast. And then you add our app into it, and now you've got not only the most widely used and I'd say most popular mid-market ERP, but now you've got an ERP that works for a government contractor. So the areas of the solution we're going to highlight today in just a really brief presentation is going to be around the general ledger. So when you think about the GL, it's about segmentation of costs. So if you looked at that SF 1408, it gets into things like segregation of direct cost from indirect cost, allowable cost from unallowable cost, allocation of indirect cost to your final cost objective. So you'll see all of those inside the general ledger. But the GL is also fully integrated with the project side of the system. So when I'm tracking, whether it be the cost side or funding, I can track it to the most detailed level. So within the WBS, if you've got funding by Akron, Clint, or Slin, we can see funding. We can see all the costing data. So whether it's direct labor, ODCs, indirect allocations, all of that through the project side. The time and expense, all fully integrated. Labor distribution is something that's unique when you sell to the federal government, especially if you have cost type work. Labor distribution is a key part of that. And there's certain methods the government says are allowable. The two most common, effective rate and standard rate. And we'll talk a little bit about what effective rate is, which is the most widely used. And then finally, indirect rates. So whether it's the allocation side or billing side of it, all of it built into the application. You don't need to go offline to Excel or some third-party product. And that's what companies love, is one solution. All of this houses those kind of capabilities. Today, we're going to focus on a services company in these specific areas. Mike and I have an upcoming webinar, as well as a Snacktime Snippet for companies that are manufacturers, to talk about how a manufacturer would leverage this solution. So let me show you a little bit about inside of Dynamics, these things that we're doing that is going to help a company to be compliant. And, we've extended this solution. The thing we didn't mention is we've been doing this a while, right? So for over 20 years, XTIVIA with the GovCon365 app has been servicing government contractors, especially ones that want to standardize on Microsoft. So the first area that we talked about in terms of SF 1408 is the chart of accounts. There's nothing fancy about this. A lot of it is institutional knowledge. What is the right way to configure your chart of accounts? And in fact, we've got what we call our best practice application setup. So for a company that's new to government contracting, so Mike talked about the fact that we're working with companies that they could be, this is the first government contract they've won. They've always been commercial. Now they're going after government work. They don't know how to handle it. We can help you there. I've been doing government services work all of my career. We've got a system, but it hasn't scaled with us, or it holds us back. We can help you there. And then we've got companies that are doing government work, but they've never had to go through the process of being audited by DCAA. That's oftentimes where clients will come in. So, the chart of accounts is designed in a way to segment those costs, whether it be direct costs, my direct section up top, from indirect costs, right? So when I get into things like my overhead and G&A and fringe, you'll have all of those elements of cost segmented and laid out. The great thing about Dynamics is you'll see this ability to drill down throughout the application. So anytime you see a number with a line underneath of it, means I can drill into it. And this column for balance, net change, and balance at date, the difference is net change means I can set a filter. So if I wanted to see just certain projects in my GL history, right? So if I go in, I've set different filters throughout time. So I could say, show me transactions for a certain period, show me transactions for a certain project. So when I pick that project, now I'm seeing transactions that are just specific to project 1002. So if I drill in, I would see only that kind of detail. So it's not just the technology, it's the know-how and design to properly segment costs. We talked about all the elements of directs and indirects, and then you've got the allocation of those costs. So up above, you see things like G&A or home office allocation, and then we would have the details in the body showing, indirects being applied out to projects. And we do it both on the GL side as well as on the project side. So when I'm in the project side of the system, and I'll just open up one of these projects, when we do the allocations, we do it to the GL. We also do it to the project side of the system. Today's webinar is not meant to go through how projects are set up, but I do just want to go over and talk a little bit about some of the elements of project setup. You've got all of your controls and formulas related to revenue, billing, budgeting, as well as managing indirects as it relates to recovery of indirects. So that would be your billing pool group for cost plus fixed fee, that fee that you earn, as well as withholding. But the area I wanted to go to is my work breakdown structure, because the government wants to see charges, to the detailed level. So within our WBS, it's a 60-character alphanumeric field. So you can charge, whether your organization goes to 2 or 3 levels or maybe 10 levels down. You can track those costs to the most detailed level, tracking funding by Akron, CLIN, or SLIN, again, with that drill down into detail. So I can drill into my funding and show the history of all the modifications of funding that's happened throughout. So in the GL, and project side are all fully integrated. So when I post to that project ledger, it automatically posts to the GL at the same time. You're never going to have things out of balance. So that's the second piece to it, right? Is the government talks about having charges under general ledger control, and they want to make sure that you're reconciling and closing your books on a regular basis. And we've got all the capabilities to help you to close and manage your financial reports as well as project reports from an organizational perspective as well as on the government side. So now, you've got the GL, we've got the project side, and then you've got a fully integrated time, expense, requisition management, as well as all the other modules that Dynamics can leverage. When I drill into the detail, on the timesheet side, we support whether it be a weekly timesheet, bi-weekly, monthly, semi-monthly, as well as client-specific timesheets. So we've had clients that have an 8-day timesheet. So, really it gives you the flexibility to support how you run your business. And you can also have employees on different timesheet cycles. So you'll have your employees that'll record labor and have that labor approved, as well as recording and approving expense reports. And you'll see that, we've got little tiles so that if I'm an approver, I can look to see what it is I need to approve, and I can review that timesheet or expense report, approve it or reject it. If I reject it, there is the ability to notify why we're rejecting it. But also in these areas, we've got the controls in place that the government looks for things like audit trail, as well as controlling time entry to make sure people aren't recording time in the future. So those things the government looks for, we try to add those controls into the system and make sure that we support them out of the box. After all your labor is processed, whether you are handling payroll inside of Dynamics or through a third-party service, we have the ability to manage your labor distribution. So once you bring in your approved time, once that's complete, then we follow up with the labor distribution process. And this is where I mentioned that, the two most common are effective rate and standard rate. The idea of effective rate is you're coming up with an effective per hour cost rate. So if I'm an hourly resource and we're processing labor weekly, it's going to look at how many hours did I work in the week, divide that by my pay to come up with a per hour rate. So the system supports these methods. And if you have cost type work, a very important part of how you manage your government contract. So that labor distribution side, all automated, all inside the system. Other things that aren't necessarily part of your, pre-award audit, but we've got the tools to manage your subcontractors. So if you've got subs that are recording labor in the system, we can automatically create a subcontractor invoice for you and be able to not only manage your subcontract agreements, but process that subcontract labor in the application. And then finally, the last thing we'll just touch on, and again, if you want to learn more, you can reach out for a full demo, and Mike's got a link at the end that'll show all of our contact information. But the last piece is really around how we handle the allocation of indirect costs to that final cost objective. So whether you have an intermediate pool or a final pool, the system is going to be able to calculate what your rates are. So for my overhead pool is made up of all of my overhead accounts, as well as the portion of fringe for overhead labor. And then my base is my direct labor for each project. And then I'm allocating those costs out to the final cost objective. And it's doing it both at a provisional rate and an actual rate, and doing it to both the general ledger as well as the project ledger. And you can run those reports inside the system at, on the project side or on the GL side, and run them at actuals or provisionals based on how you're trying to manage the business. And then finally, that ability to track what is your provisional rate for billing We have the ability to have budgeted rates, which would be project-specific rates. But all of these things are all in one integrated system, helping you to be compliant, as well as helping you to run your business. And that's the thing we're trying to do, is give you the tools to be compliant, but also give you the tools to successfully run your business. We want to make sure that you can build and maintain, but stay compliant at the same time. And Mike, that is our mission, is helping these government contractors to be DCAA compliant, but also help them to successfully run a profitable business. So that's today's Snack Time Snippet. And one, we appreciate your time. And like I mentioned, feel free to reach out to Mike and I to learn more. And if you want to see a full demonstration, we're happy to do that at any time.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. That was excellent. Very informative, but it also showed some of the power and flexibility that you have handling this compliance and maintaining this compliance. And the key word there is all in, well, key term, I should say, all in one system. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining for another edition of our GovCon365 Snack Time Snippets. You can see both Paul and myself, our contact information is there. If you have any questions, want to learn more about the solution and how it can help, please do not hesitate to reach out at any point. Until next time, you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.